do a quick intro. Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to our An Evening With for July, which is a conversation with Robert J. Grimes, psychotherapist and deep thinking, deep hearted man. And he'll be talking about relationships and conflict. But before we do that, we always start with a poem. So I'm going to read a poem, and it's a different one than the one I thought I was going to read. Sometimes the muse and mystery just works on you in the silence. And so this is one that has come to me. I'm going to share my screen, and hopefully you can read it. And so this is a poem by Adrienne Rich, and it's very symbolic, metaphoric, and it's called Diving into the Wreck. Diving into the Wreck. First, having read the book of myths and loaded the camera, I check the edge of the knife blade. I put on the body armor of black rubber, the absurd flippers, the grave and awkward mask. I am having to do this not like Cousteau with his assiduous team aboard the sun-flooded schooner, but here alone. There is a ladder. The ladder is always there. There is a ladder. The ladder is always there, hanging innocently close to the side of the schooner. We know what it is for. We who have used it. Otherwise, it's a piece of maritime floss, some sundry equipment. I go down. I go down, rung after rung, and still the oxygen immerses me, the blue light, the clear atoms of our human air. I go down. My flippers cripple me. I crawl like an insect down the ladder, and there is no one to tell me where the ocean will begin. There's no one to tell me where the ocean will begin. First, the air is blue, and then it is bluer, and then green, and then black. I am blacking out, and yet my mask is powerful. It pumps my blood with power. The sea is another story. The sea is not a question of power. I have to learn alone to turn my body without force in the deep element. And now it is easy to forget what I came for. It's easy to forget what I came for among so many who have always lived here, swaying their crenulated fans beneath the reefs. And besides, you breathe differently down here. You breathe differently down here. I came to explore the wreck. The words are purposes. The words are maps. I came to see the damage that was done and the treasures that prevail. I stroke the beam of my lamp slowly along the flank of something more permanent than fish or weed. The thing I came for, the wreck, and not the story of the wreck. The thing I came for, the wreck, and not the story of the wreck. The thing itself, and not the myth. The drowned face always staring towards the sun. The evidence of damage, worn by salt and sway into this threadbare beauty, the ribs of the disaster, curving their assertions among the tentative haunters. This is the place. I am here. And I am here. The mermaid whose dark hair streams black, the merman in his armored body. We circle silently about the wreck. We dive into the hold. I am she, I am he, whose drowned face sleeps with open eyes, whose breasts still bear the stress, whose silver, copper, vermeil cargo lies obscurely inside barrels, half wedged and left to rot. We are the half-destroyed instruments that once held to a course, the water-eaten log that fouled the fouled compass. We are, I am, you are, by cowardice or courage, the one who finds our way back to this scene, carrying a knife, a camera, a book of myths in which our names do not appear. That is a story. That is Diving into the Wreck by Adrienne Rich. And I'm going to hand over to Robert, and I will put. Do you want to try do it at your end so you can flick when you're ready, Robert? Your slideshow, or do you want me to do it? What's your preference? You're on mute.
If you've got them, if you can do them, then it saves any hassle with.
Perfect. I'll just start that now.
Yep.
Okay. Over to you. That should flash up on the screen.
Yep. Has everyone got that one up there? Yeah, cool. Okay. So thank you, man. Thank you for being here and being present with me in some of this information that I'm going to share with you and have a conversation about it. Because more about this is that you might learn something, but hopefully you learn something about yourself, because that's the whole idea. And this, I haven't done this sort of, this webinar or this presentation before. I am going to do it at the Manhood Gathering coming up in August in about 5 weeks' time. But this title, The Art of Compassionate Conflict, it came up for me when, I don't know, I think it was about a month ago or so on the media. We had all that, again, coming up around violence against women. And I went, wow, yes, it's always there, but the media grabs hold of it, then it gets political and everything. And I've gone, and then what came up for me is the art of compassionate conflict, because in relationships, in intimate relationships, but it can be relationships with your children, it can be with your friends, can be at work with your colleagues, right? It's inevitable to have conflict, right? To have misunderstandings and just not understanding each other. Or you want to get into a place of like, no, I'm right and they're wrong. And then they're doing the same thing, because then it becomes a power struggle. So we will talk about that. So how can we do conflict? How can we have an argument but be respectful and understanding of the other and yourself? Well, we're going to journey there tonight, right? We're going to journey there. So if you want to just put the next slide on, just click the next slide would be great, Paul. Thank you, mate. So anger, aggression and violence, right? What is the difference with them? Does one lead to the other? Are they all acceptable? Now, they can have different answers because of different settings and different situations. But there is a difference between anger. Anger is the emotional energy that comes up in us. That's what that is. It's a sensation and an energy in your body. That's all it is. And it becomes very motivational. And then when it becomes motivational, it can tip over into aggression. That can mean, tone of voice, loud, strong movements of like objection to something. So that's aggression. Then it can tip over into violence. And then violence is when someone is hurt or violated, mostly physically in some way. It can be from our own body, or it could be violence as in punching a wall. That's violence. And the reality is with that, then the violence is you could put a hole in the wall and you could break your knuckles. So that's violent against yourself then, right? And of course, when we think of it, anger, aggression and violence, we can be violent and people are violent against themselves. And then the ultimate of violence is to somebody, to yourself, is some sort of suicide maybe. It could be. We're not talking about suicide tonight. I just wanted to add that in. So There is a difference. Does one lead to the other? Yes. However, if you're aware of when you're angry, and we'll look at this, when you're angry, you can then, you're aware of, you're conscious that you're angry, you can make a choice whether you shift into aggression and, of course, shift into violence, right? And are they all acceptable? Well, yes, in certain situations. You know, when you're at war, which is a few of them going on at the moment, unfortunately, they're all acceptable. And to do violence, you probably need that strong energy of anger to get anywhere near violence. You're not going to be able to do violence if you're feeling sad and depressed. It's a little bit hard, but that's another matter when it comes to depression, because depression can become passive aggressive. So they can all be acceptable. However, what ones of those are acceptable at home, at work, with your friends? You know, like, and it's hard to know. All I could say for myself, I don't like violence. I struggle with it. Anyone being violent. But, you know, on the football field, all the different codes, aggression is always there. And then sometimes there's violence. And that's where it just tips over. So at home, it's probably not a good thing to have violence there. With your children, with yourself, with anybody else, not a good idea. But sometimes you can be aggressive. So that comes up. So we'll have a look at that. So, Paul, do you want to move to the next slide, mate? Thank you. So this one, I've been using this screen, or this way of looking at what goes on with anger, but there's also what goes on with depression or sadness. So we're mainly going to look at the green zone up to the amber zone up to the red zone, right? I'll just briefly mention the other way, from the green down to the blue, down to the black. So blue is, you know, sadness. Black is you're getting depressed, down, you're way down there. You're into depression, deep depression. But we're looking at the going up the scale, spiraling up, as I call it, right? So ideally, at any given time, we want to be, and this is human nature, we want to be into the green or the green zone, right? Calm, relaxed, happy, chill, cruisy. Green zone, yeah, a bit up and down, but mostly okay, no big hassles. But as we all know, life and situations in life and at home, in relationship, it's not always in the green zone, not always calm and relaxed, because different things and others' behaviour can trigger us, right? So that's when we can end up in the amber zone. And the amber is you've had a triggering incident. And let's just stick with this at home, right? Things at home or with your intimate relationships. And what I mean by intimate relationships, you have intimate relationships with your children, hopefully, because intimacy is not sex, it's being close and connected. So, and with your partner and your wives and all partners. So amber, once you get up into amber to the 5, you need to realise where you're at, right? That you've had a sensation in your body, right? So it's come up and you feel it. Ugh. And a lot of times when that comes up in the spiral up thing, I feel it in my gut. I feel it down in my gut and I go, oh, okay, that whatever that incident was, or somebody else's behaviour, or could even be my own, has started to trigger me, right? So once we get to a 6, 7 and an 8, don't even try to have a conversation with your partner, with your children, even with your work colleagues, because you have got no leeway between a 7 and a 10. You're going to go off, right? And you only need your children, your partner, or a work colleague to just say, just do something that just you don't like, and boom, you'll go up. You'll go up further. So you've got no leeway from a 6 or a 7 and you head up to a 10. And unfortunately, when you get the 10 or, 9 or 10, you've exploded. And I don't know about you, but I think most of us would know what exploding is like. I've been there. And it's like, wow. And once the explosion goes off, once it's almost like a bit of a brain snap, it's just gone. And we'll look at that a little bit later. You've gone off. And then when you calm down, however long that takes, you can go, oh my God, why did I say or do that? Right? So you need to be aware, and we're gonna look at how to bring yourself back down, right? Because it's not going to be a happy conversation or conflict or whatever's happening. If you're up in around the 7s, the 8s, and definitely the 9s, you've got nothing left there. So you've got to try and get back down, at least down to the green zone. All right, we'll talk about that soon. So I've used those in men's work and women's work, but most of my work has been men's work over the years, down here in the Tweed area mainly. So, Paul, you want to pop the next one on, mate? Okay. You are not your anger. You're not. It's just taken over you at any given time, right? You're not your aggression or your violence either, right? But it's got a hold on you, right? And what is anger? What does it do? A deeper sense, it keeps you safe. It's your survival mode. You are threatened. In some way, you are threatened if you get angry. You might not realize it, but underneath, what the hell's going on there? You're scared, and then underneath, you can be scared, hurt, shamed, or sad. And I did this when I was younger, put on this mask and this armor, I'm tough, and just be there, but underneath it, there's something else going on. So being in your survival mode and at home isn't going to work. It's not going to work at home with your kids and your partner. Probably doesn't work. It's not going to work with your friends either, or even work colleagues. So what happens is your primal brain is activated. And there it is. There's the 3 things that I see what our primal brain is, what connects to our amygdala, our emotional center. But its primary purpose is to keep you safe, keep you alive, right? And procreating, right? But we're not talking about procreating tonight, but that's what it does. Your primal instinctual urges: stay safe, stay alive, procreate. So next one, Paul. Here we are. These are my terms, or my words that I use now very much. And this is all conceptual, right? But it makes sense to me. We have a protective personality. We've been talking about that. It's fueled by anger, but it's fear-based, right? It's our protective personality. We've constructed it to get what we need from pretty much probably the day we were born. We've constructed it. You could call it the ego, a false self, shadow self, primal self. I just call it our protective personality. And it has layers around us. And what are the layers protecting? Our soulful self, our beautiful essence of who we are. That is, we are born with and we're born as, right? It's our, whatever words work for you, it's your divine, essential and true self, your divine spirit, your divine spark, your divine energy, and it's God-given. However you perceive God to be, it's God-given. That's who. If you didn't have your soulful self, you would not be alive. It's your spark, it's your essence of who you are. So both of the soulful self and your protective personality you can have conflict within yourself with both of those, big time, right? Your soulful self, of course, is love-based. It's compassionate, it's caring. It can be tough love as well on yourself and with your loved ones. Next slide, Paul. Thank you. How do we know which one? Like, how do we know when we're in a soulful self or a protective personality? And why do we flip from one to the other? Can we eliminate our protective personality? My belief is, and I've tried this, the more that I try to eliminate it, the more powerful it gets, right? However, can we illuminate the protective personality? Yes, and I've done that. And what does that mean? The more we illuminate it, the more it fades away. So the more we bring it into the light, the more we bring it into our soulfulness, it fades away, right? Because our protective personality cannot survive. It cannot survive. It fades away in love, right? It fades away in love because, and if you just look at it as fear and love, fear fades away when love is there and love comes to the surface out of us. And so it just fades away and can't survive. So Paul, next one, mate. Okay, so we're just going to talk, well, I'll ask for some, questions around this one, I think. But tracking your triggers, right? I use that word these days because everyone uses it. We get triggered. It just means it's a heightened emotional response to something that you have been part of or experiencing something, with others, or it might not be with others. But it's time, because you're listening to me here right now, it's time for you to take responsibility for your triggers, because your triggers are not coming from the other person. Their behavior might trigger you. What they say to you might trigger you. What one of your children, might say something to you and it triggers you because you go, oh, you can't say that to me. I'm the parent here and you're the child. Well, they can say it to you and they do, especially adolescents. They'll do it all the time. So what I'm about to just go through here is something we're not going to resolve tonight. And some of this comes from Richard Raw's stuff as well, right? That it's like, how do you track your triggers? Well, when there is somebody else that has a frustrating behavior, right, then your initial emotional response normally, may not be, but normally it can be anger, because that is your protective emotion. It protects you from their frustrating, annoying, or obscene, whatever it is, behavior of the other person or the other thing. Then you have a reactive behavior, right? Something will happen, right? You'll either fight or flight or do something in between both of those. Then underneath your anger will be your hidden fear. And then even underneath that, we're going really deep now. but I just thought I'd throw this in. Underneath your hidden fear is your core fear, right? And what are your core fears? Well, they come from lack of self-esteem or affection, need for security and survival, and a desire for power and control. That's where your core fears will come from. And then they come up because you have a need, right? You have a need with this frustrating behavior of this other person. You have a need to be valued or respected or appreciated. But when they're either being aggressive with you or giving you, saying something that you don't like, you're not being valued or respected or appreciated. So you have a need there. That's all of what happens in your triggers, tracking your triggers around all of that. So next slide, Paul. So this one here is this is how to communicate. So, to be able to do this is a way of being compassionate and understanding of yourself and the other if you start to have a conversation where, oops, it's getting a bit out of control here, right? You've got to stop and you've got to slow down. And this is I language. So, a lot of us know what that means, I language. It's not going, you made me do this. You're angry at me. You're aggressive at me. You're hitting me at the moment, right? All of that. No, start with you and start with your emotions. I feel. Now, most of the time we can say, I feel angry, right? When you, and blah, 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 whatever, and then you express your values or what's going on for you and what you would like is, right? So that's using I language around what's going on in a situation. Most of the time the argument will stop if you do that. But most of the time we can't get to that place in the argument because we're triggered. We're in our primal brain. We're trying to protect ourselves. And so we can't get back into our frontal cortex, our rational and reasoning part. So next one, Paul. So this is a dynamic cycle that happens, and this comes from emotional focus, couples work, therapy stuff that I've had training in. And all it means is this is the dynamic, like the energy dynamic cycle that happens in a relationship. Now let's just stick with your partner or your children, right? This is what happens, right? That there's something happens, there's a behavior of one of you. Say it's the other person. There's a behavior that you don't like, right? They're doing something and you get a trigger. It shoots down here, shoots right down to the bottom into the secondary emotions, right? Which are normally going to be angry, frustration, annoyance, those sort of feelings, right? Then you will have an interpretation around what this behavior was like over here. You'll have interpretation. So you do that very quick in your head. It's in your head. And then you will have a behavior here to counter this behavior using the anger that's down in your secondary emotion here. And you'll have a behavior that shoots across here and down into the energy area of the other person. And then they have a secondary emotion. And then they'll have interpretation on what that behavior was about. And then they'll have the same behavior, or they might try a different one. You're both trying to protect yourself. You're in a power struggle. I'm right, you're wrong, and the other's doing the same. So then that cycle keeps going on, right? And unfortunately, in that cycle, you'll probably, if it's, people close to you, you'll start hurting each other. And it goes inside, the hurt goes inside, and then you walk away and you go, oh, because the primary emotions that underneath this, they're not what's working at this stage. The trigger is the angry emotions that happen here, because they're protecting you. They are protecting who you truly are, because your soulful self is this beautiful, sensitive, loving being that you are. That's what it is. So you'll have primary emotions underneath, right? And you're losing your connection with the other person, and there's the fears and all the other primary emotions underneath that, which I talked about before. It can be, hurts and sad and all of those that are underneath. Shame can be under there. When shame comes up, well, this has just come up for me. I wasn't going to share about this, but shame can be big for us men. And when that comes up, we want to protect ourselves from feeling that shame. So the anger will do it. The anger will hold that shame inside, and no one else will know that we're feeling shame or embarrassed, right? That's what can happen. So next one, Paul. Okay, we're getting a bit softer now, right? So if all of that happens in your relationships at home, with your children, with your partner, on varying degrees and levels of on the traffic lights that happen for you and the other, right? If you can have the 5 languages of love, and if you know what your children's love language is, primary and secondary one, and your partners, and they know yours, by doing those love languages to your other loved ones, you'll build up trust, you'll build up connection with each other. So when there is an argument and a conflict, it won't have a big serious effect, because you trust each other, you appreciate each other, because you have provided the love languages for your others. And don't forget about your children, even young children, right? Don't get them to go and try and figure out what their love language is. You learn what the love languages are, and there they are there in front of you. You learn what they are and experiment with your young children. Experiment. What do they like from you? Do they like you doing something for them, acts of service? Do they like gifts? Do they like quality time? You just hanging out with them and being with them. Do they like touch? Do they like being affirmed for who they are as a child, or if it's your partner? Do they like being affirmed, with lovely words, and affirm their soulful self? That's what you need to affirm. They're a soulful self. Their protective personality, they'll have it as well, even your children. And the thing is, you don't want to affirm that. You affirm what's underneath their protective personality, their beautiful soulful self, and who they are. So like for me, my number one is physical touch, and then words of affirmation. They're my 2. So I just warm towards people. And that's why I love, in men's gatherings, we do lots of hugging. It's like, it's a love language. Doesn't mean anymore that I just warm towards them, right? But of course, when you're in a intimate relationship, none of these languages of love are sex, but every one of them can lead to beautiful sexual activity, because you warm towards each other. I've heard many women say, especially mums that are busy with looking after children and all that sort of stuff, and when their partner comes home from work or whatever, if it's in that traditional role, they come home and and their partner just does something, does the vacuuming, takes the washing off the line, does something like that, and that's not normally what they do. That's an act of service that can turn their partner on, right? I just wanted to bring that up, that these are not sex, but they can all lead to it or lead to strong affection for each other. So next one, Paul. Appreciation practice as well. How much time have I got left, Paul? I'll just check.
I'm on mute. Yeah, probably 5, no more than 5 or 10. Oh, yeah, I'm unmuted now. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Okay. Yeah. So with all of this, there's like this appreciation practice. So this is, it could be one of the love languages, but everyone likes to be appreciated, including all of us. So put this in place at home with your kids and get them to do it back to you as well. One thing I appreciate about you is ... right? When you do something, so there's the acts of service. When you do something, I feel, whatever it is, valued and respected. Thank you for listening and receiving what I have said. So you tell them that, right? You tell them that. And then the other then can say, thank you for sharing what you appreciate about me. And then they can share what touched me about what you said is. So these are different ways of communicating, which actually, that will stop and it will stop or minimize any conflict that can happen in all of that. So next one, please, Paul. So our triggers and our nervous system, right? Just so you realize, because we've all got a nervous system. We're all humans. Well, any animals have nervous systems. Actual fact, in some way, in different ways, so does flora, so does, trees and all sorts of things, but that's the different matter. So we have a relationship with someone else's nervous system and our own. So we need to be aware of that, need to be aware of others' traumas that have happened in their lives, that you don't trigger them, right? And then these are with your loved ones. And then the same for you. They need to know what your traumas or your stresses or whatever's happened in your past that might still be there, that they don't want to trigger those as best as possible not to. So what the journey for you men, because you're listening to me now, is to become the adult in the relationship that you didn't have when you were a child. Does that make sense? So you are now the adult. So you want to, with others in your relationship, you want to be what you wanted when you were a child. And what might that be? Compassion and care and support and love languages and all of that. And so just with this here, this last one here, and this might trigger you all right? So I'll explain it, but I'm going to just say it the way it is. So what we need to do is to calm down, to grow up, or leave. What does that mean? What does the leave mean? Oh, sometimes in relationships, literally do need to leave. So that's not what I'm really talking about there. So leaving means, and if you can bring up that last slide, Paul. Leaving means healthy time out. And what that means is, I'll explain this, and this is the end. This will be the end of, and then we'll go into questions, if you like. So healthy time out, it's structured, but what it is you agree with your partner, can be with your adult children as well, but let's just stick with your partner, that if things get heated, right, and you know that you're escalating on those traffic lights and you're getting up to a 6 or a 7 and you can feel the anger coming up, right? And if you can catch that, right, and say, hey, I need 20 minutes right now to calm down, right? That's healthy timeout. But the reality is with healthy timeout, you must come back. You must come back to talk when you've calmed down and your partner's calmed down, right? Because if you don't come back, that's unhealthy timeout. That means you go out, you take off because it's all too heated. That's it. And you know that you're going to escalate and say something, or your partner's going to say something that's not helpful. Then what happens is you go away, they both go away. That issue or that situation goes under the carpet. And then it comes up again and you go away and you don't even address it, or you don't come back when you're calm, it goes under the carpet. Guess what? You and your partner and your children are going to trip over that carpet. So the healthy timeout means you come back after you've calmed down. But you need to learn a tool to calm down, because when you're escalated, when you're triggered, you're in your primal brain. So you've got no blood, your heart rate's gone up. There's no blood supply. There's very little at your frontal cortex, very little. It all gets pulled down to your primal brain and into your amygdala. And it's just firing. It's firing. So what you've got to do is calm down. There's many different ways, but, you go for a short walk. You can do mindfulness. You can breathe. Breathing is essential, right? To breathe. And that will calm you down. No, there's no hesitation that breathing will calm you down. But you've got to use it, and you've got to come and do it, and you've got to get your mind to come down and to breathe and follow your breath down into your diaphragm, right? So you're giving your mind something to do, which is you're giving your primal brain something to do at that time, to just follow and track that down into your belly, and then breathe back out again and just keep breathing and keep breathing. So, breath and breath work is not just physical. Breath is spiritual, big time. It's big time spiritual. You can go Yahweh. You can just breathe in and out, Yahweh, Yahweh, Yahweh. And that will calm you down. But then you've got to come back and see if you can talk to your partner when they can't calm down. If you can't calm down in a certain period of time, you've got to let them know. Sorry, I'm still escalated. I'm still angry. I need to calm down. But you need to learn that tool. So thanks, man. So we can drop the slides away and we can have a bit of a conversation, if you like. What came up for you guys? Paul, we're not necessarily going to go into. Are we going into small groups, or what do you reckon?
I think. Sorry, my internet's just gone a bit unstable. Yeah, I think we're in a small enough group that if people are happy to be in a whole group together, I think that would be good for questions and reflections. If we want to do some reflecting, I might just pause the recording for a moment, and then we do question and answers for the recording, maybe, if that's okay. So I'll just pause the recording now.
Does anyone want to share anything that's come up for you? You might disagree with something I said. That's okay. It's quite okay to disagree with me. I'm just
Robert. Yeah, Robert. One of the interesting things at the end when you had that the time out of just processing and then getting yourself where you can re-enter, that can be still a very difficult time, I think. Certainly experience. You feel very raw. Maybe that sense of whether it's the shame or just the damage and the pain that you feel, stepping back into that conversation, is it important to have some ground rules, some way of being able to do that? Because I find that it's something that you can approach with a lot of fear because of how much, how raw and how painful that is. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, there is, like a little bit like that I statement or I language stuff, that's the best way to start that, that conversation again, so Chris, it could be, when you come back and you've calmed down. That's why you need to be able to tune into your body and know if I calm down, it's not just calming down up here, because the energy of whatever is going on for you is inside your body.
Yes.
Is that you come back and you sit down, you're calm, hopefully your partner's calm, and then you say, I felt scared right then, or I felt hurt.
Yes.
Right? It's best to start with how you're feeling. And then you can say, when you said those words to me, or when you did this, whatever it is, and that, so it's and it levels everything. But it can be, this is not just for men, it can be for women too, but it's a very vulnerable place to share those primary emotions that are underneath, any anger that might come up in the conflict, to share them, because it's risky. The other person, like if I said to my wife and I said, I feel scared right now, she could say, she doesn't, she could say, what are you scared for? And totally discount how I'm feeling. And then I would go, oh, I'd shut off again, right? So it's risky and it's vulnerable to share, but it's worth it. It's worth it to do that. But you've got to stop. You've got to calm down. Yeah.
And following on from that, over like the first time that you do that, it's very unknown territory, but because your triggers are often the same things, they just get triggered by something else, but it's still the same emotional buttons that you've got under there that are plumbed down and wired onto those deep hurts or things from before you even met your wife, quite likely.
That's it, Chris.
Going through it again and again, you start to, that's where I was saying ground rules are there, things that you can come to. Like one thing that can be helpful is to say, look, I just want you to know, honey, we are okay. I love you. We've been together for however long. You're valuable to me, but I need to share with you, and take the I from there, but saying something like that can affirm the relationship, because something that can happen straight off is that you think, well, is that the end? I'm walking out of here and I'm not coming back. Those kind of initial reactions that can be, the rapid reaction.
Yep.
That's irrational. That's not what you want, but that can do a lot of damage. And somehow to be able to give that assurance to value, that can at least give something of a, like a bit of a stepping stone, or something that's a safe statement. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. The other thing around that, when an argument escalates, how do you call a healthy timeout? Because I've had many couples where they can't even open their mouth, because if they open their mouth, it's going to come out. Wah! So they have a safe word, or they do something like this, right? Like
Yep,
just
yeah.
as quick as I can, I'll tell you what happened with my wife and I. And this was years ago, and we were in a business meeting, right? And I was up at the whiteboard and I'm putting stuff up there, and I can be very assertive in what I say. And she came up with this. She said, if I go orange flag, it means that you need to stop and sit down and bring your tone of voice down. All right? If we're there, next minute she gets triggered and she goes red flag, that's immediate timeout, healthy timeout, right? And I need to have timeout because I might have been stopped mid-sentence and now I'm frustrated because I was on a roll or what I was saying. So I'd go outside and go for a walk for 5 minutes. She'd go and make a cup of tea. Then we come back again, all right? So, yeah, she came up with orange flag. That means I can stay there and she can stay there, but I got to sit down and bring my tone of voice down. All right. Red flag, nah, it's over. It's time out for that period of time. And then we both got to calm down. Both got to calm down. So you've got to spend the time to calm down. You've got to have that tool, that technique for yourself.
Robert,
Yeah.
Robert, can you hear me, Robert?
Yep.
Yeah. A question. After you've had the healthy time out, it may be that you've realised that the subject of the conversation is one that you're not able actually to continue with at this time, but you emphasised, and I believe rightly, that you must come back after the healthy time out, rather than just disappearing altogether. And what I've sometimes said is put my hands up and say, I want to put a bookmark in this conversation, and undertake to come back and say when I want to resume the conversation, rather than try and negotiate at that point when I will resume the conversation, because I'm already become aware that I'm not able to proceed with the conversation even after my healthy time out, if you can follow me. So I'm wondering whether what your reflection is about sort of a two-step thing. Step one is your healthy time out. At the end of that, I'm realising, look, I can't continue with this right now, so go back, remake connection, but for the purpose only of advising, saying, look, I want to continue the conversation, but I don't know when I can do that, but I will do that. Okay.
Yep. Now that happens, that's negotiating and communicating. Right? Yeah, and that sometimes needs to happen. I remember a few years ago, I had a couple come in to see me, and he's gone, no way, I can't do that in 20 minutes. I need a day. Right? And Jeff, you might be saying, sometimes might need 2 days. Now, that can be really challenging for the relationship.
Oh, yeah.
But if that's the way it is, that's the way it is, right? Yeah. But it's communicating, right? So I tell couples to go, like I say, minimum 20 minutes, but it may be longer, right? But you've got to learn that tool to calm down. Whatever it is, you've got to find something to calm down, because it works and it'll help you in other relationships as well. So then, say for an example, it's half an hour and one of the parties can't come back because they haven't settled down enough. They haven't calmed down enough. They need to communicate some way. You know, if they've gone for a walk and like they've agreed that a half an hour is the time, right? They've agreed when they're both calm that if something comes up, we're going to do a half an hour. So you only have to go time out. Both know that it's half an hour. And if you can't calm down in a half an hour, or you've got to go to work, or you've got to do some other thing, you've got to let them know. That's the communication. And whether it's a text message, say, sorry, honey, I'm still agitated. It's still going on for me right now. I'm sorry, I can't come back to talk to you. I need another half an hour. Or it looks like I'm going to need the rest of the day. But the unhealthy timeout, Jeff, is if you have an argument, right? And you take off in the car and you're gone all day and your partner doesn't know, your wife doesn't know where you're at. That's unhealthy and not good at all for the relationship. Because in a sense, they might be worried about you. You know, so you've got to communicate. Yeah. Communicate how much time, and then communicate if you can't come back in that designated time. Otherwise, that's when, it's just, otherwise the other's just left there going, when are we ever going to talk about this? We're not, you know, and that's when it does go under the carpet. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll just speak what I got out of that awesome talk, and thank you very much, Robert, was tracking my triggers, because it's also identifying what they are, so that you're aware of possibly the anger that comes from those triggers, and I think that's what I'm still searching for, some of those, to identify them, because as you said, I think going deeper, it comes down to fear or shame or loss of control, and sadness, and well, it can be sadness, and then there's a core. I think you said a core.
Core fear. A
core fear down deep, that is where that leads to, and for me, it's tracking or trying to identify all of those triggers, because, you know, as you said, you need to have that communication. You need to be respectful. You need to, when you're communicating with your wife and your kids and people outside the circle or the house, if you like, even though those triggers will come up at different points, you know. So that's what I got out of it. I try to use I statements as much as I can. I think it's also hard when, I guess, your partner or whoever isn't, is maybe still going like that, not like that.
Yes, that's right.
So, and I am still guilty of that to this day, because, you know, I will muck up, but I am becoming more aware. But yeah, I guess my hunt is identifying the triggers and being very aware of the anger, which, as you said before, can be used in a positive way as well. But it's having everything under control and being able to sit down with the people you love and having those conversations in love, I guess, is where I'm going. Yeah. So I just thought I'd speak to that. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. So Darren, just quickly there for all of you, and this is not just for men, but I'm speaking to men here, all right? When the anger comes up and you go away and you go, oh, shit, you can release that energy, get it out. You know, there's many different ways. You can journal about it. Be very explicit when you journal. You can even say things about whoever because they're not going to see it. The other person or the other party is not going to see what you're writing. Get it out on paper, then go and burn it. Or do a big roar. Get in your car and just feel all the energy of that anger inside of you, right? Then let it out with noise. Nobody else, don't do it. Don't do it in the car when others are in the car. My wife and I have done that together when we're both angry about something. That was okay because we're both clear what we're doing. She screamed and I roared. But it's you can let the energy out, right? You can go to the gym or you can go and do something else and do that as well. You know, you go for a run. But what I say is before you go for the run or you go to the gym or go to a punching bag, and by the way, don't put your partner's face on the punching bag. That's out, right? But if you go to the gym, it's a punching bag, feel the anger. My anger is in my gut. That's, you know, that primal stuff. Feel it, acknowledge it, then let it out with the punching or let it out with the raw. So acknowledge your anger first and then you'll release it. But if you don't acknowledge it, yeah, it'll, that's it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Cool. Okay.
Maybe time for one last question or comment. But
Yeah.
I do want to say, yeah, a huge thank you, Robert. Sorry.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll jump in if that's all right.
Yeah, Andy.
Yeah, thanks, Robert.
Is now taking.
Just reflecting on everything. What I've received is, I guess, a framework of when I'm triggered now, a framework to understand. Like I have the understanding of I'm angry, but I guess the framework for me now is I'm triggered, I'm angry. I do give myself time out, but now the time out for me is having a purpose in that time out. So using the time out to, get rid of the energy, but also dive deeper into what's underneath that. So when I do come back, that it's like crossing that threshold of I'm hurt, I'm not seen, and starting the conversation that way. So yeah, I guess for me, it's a really nice to see like the broader picture of when I am triggered. So thanks, Robert.
Yeah, good, Andy. So that's it. And like if you're coming to the manhood gathering, I don't know whether you are in August.
Yeah, I'll be there.
Yeah. So I'm gonna do 2-hour workshop on this. So there'll be more body work and breath work happening in that because we'll be getting into it, into the body around our anger and our protective personality, and then exposing and bringing up our soulful self, our beautiful soulful self, our love essence.
Beautiful.
Wonderful. So, and if any one of you, want to do some more work on this, you can just get in touch with me. It's, it's work that I do all the time. So, it's true. My business is Love Life Matters. That's it. Love Life Matters. It'll come up.
Well, Robert, we are in debt to you for your just wonderful, practical, helpful, soulful advice and wisdom that you've shared with us tonight. Thanks for opening up some just simple, easy to kind of understand ways to understand what drives conflict for each of us and the ways in which we can pay attention and notice and be aware of where we're reacting and what we need in the moment, and paying attention to that stuff, which often I think as men, we're wounded sometimes in the feeling function, and we can't always name the ways that we feel and what we're feeling in a moment. And so I really appreciated your way of helping us just to kind of have some frameworks and understanding to put those feelings in some context, and to have some helpful tools to take from here into our relationship, into those conflict moments that arise, and to find that loving essence in that, and to be aware of those protective practices and parts of us that kind of shut down and just react. So thank you so much. We will keep you updated, everyone, on our next An Evening With. I've put those links for some of the events in our chat. So I think it was Andy and anyone else who's interested in the mental health first aid or MROP, Men's Rites of Passage, they're there as well. But thank you for our wonderful evening together. And thank you, Robert. This will go out to everyone who's subscribed to our An Evening With as a resource. So I'm sure many people from here will really benefit from this, just really down to earth, helpful kind of information and sharing that you've given us tonight. So thank you so much.
Wonderful. Thank you, Paul. Thanks for having me here, and thank you for being present, all of you.
Yeah, thank you, mate.
Wonderful.
Thanks, Robert.
Thank you.
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks so
you.
much.
Cheers.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.
Good night, guys.
See you next month, maybe.
Yes.
Yep.
Good
Thank
night.
you.
Cheers. See ya. I'll just stop that recording.